iconic theater project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of town. During the next year, we will return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by the members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Parada.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is a third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilker, head of theater department at University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back out in that mess back east. Best thing about it's the climate. The cold and the wind. They say that the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
Then you have the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president at University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And, well, here during the summertime, I let my kids play outside until, 11 o'clock. I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, don't know someone they know, so it can only be removed at 1 degree at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, when I go to the grocery store, I get to visit with 4, 5, 6 people every time I go. And I don't mind people knowing my business, because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains, too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most times they don't. Even though there is that one that goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Boston, but everyone in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
And them trains, they used to carry cattle. Now what they carry are diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
I mean, Laramie is better than when I grew up. I'll give it that.
Now, when that incident with that boy happened, a lot of press people came down here, and one day someone followed me out to a crime scene, and this one reporter, lady, person who was out there, she said to me,
"Well, who found the boy? Who's out here anyway?"
and I said, well, it's a real popular place to run out here. Mountain biking's real big. Horseback riding is just, well, it's close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
"Who the hell would want to run out here?"
And I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the point. You know, they were nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged, I felt that they were stupid, you know? They're missing the point. They're just missing the point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now. I mean, to tell you what Laramie is, you know, for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
I mean, if you would have asked me before, I would have told you. Laramie, it's a beautiful town, you know. It's secluded, so you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everybody knows everybody. A town with a personality that, well, most larger cities are just stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I'd say Laramie is a town defined by an accident, by a crime. We've become Waco. We've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Journal entries. Members of the company, Andy Paris.
So Moises called saying he had a new idea for his theater project, but, you know, there's a bit of somberness to his voice. So I asked him, you know, what's it about? He said he wanted to do a piece about what's happening over in Wyoming.
Stephen Belberg.
Lee told me that the company was going to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come, but I'm hesitant. I'm not entirely sure I want to be involved in a Townsend rally.
Amanda Graham.
I've never done anything like this in my life. I mean, how do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie if we can interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one's alone, everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
I must tell you that when I first heard you were thinking of coming here, I wanted to say you just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? Well, then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and I've decided there's been so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. I mean, when this whole thing happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because, well, they can be a little redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's an excitement that I didn't have back home in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that you couldn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to force an opinion, and quite honestly, I'd rather have an opinion that I didn't like and have that dynamic in teaching. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Laramie my whole life. The family's been in Wyoming, I don't know, generations. So when it came time to send me to college, my parents, well, they couldn't afford it. And I wanted to study theater. So anyway, I knew that if I didn't get on a scholarship, then I wasn't going to be able to go to college. So they had this competition going on, I guess the Wyoming State High School Theater Contest, whatever. I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went up to the theater director of the university, and you know, I just flat out said it. I said, I need a killer scene. He looked at me for a bit, handed me a piece of paper and said, here you go, this is it. It was from Angels in America. I read the scene, I knew that if I did good enough, I could take first place. So when the time came, I told my parents, you know, so they'd come and watch me. Now, you gotta understand, my parents, they go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever been in. So, they take me into their room. They say that if I do this scene, they're not gonna watch me in the competition. They believe that it's wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. And they feel so strongly about this, they're not gonna watch their son do possibly the most important thing to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I'd never gone against my parents' wishes, so yeah, I was really nervous. But I decided to do it. All I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner took center stage, we shook hands. There was a standing ovation. It was amazing. We took first place too. We won. That's why I can be here at the university, because of that scene. It was the greatest moment of my life, and you know, my parents weren't there.
Company member Greg Ferrati.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear, I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Funkowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and yes, Debbie Reynolds was big back then, but I promise I won't slap you. You put your elbows on the table.
Today the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now you from Wyoming, or you just passing through? We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and on the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as cable TV or heated pool are usually touted, it said, hate is not a Laramie value.
Greg Ferrati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like, when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was too. I enjoyed it. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could have your horse, your cow, your little chickens. Just have your little bit of acreage.
I could run around the house, not all together, through the house right by the kids in school. And no one could see me if they got that close.
That was
their problem.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your, altogether's.
Well, yeah, honey, while we're in clothes.
Now he's gonna use that in his play.
So this was a big ranch in town.
No, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time before they moved everything up to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha, and now it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. But what was it, in the 50s? They had this one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop that they could build a complete engine.
Mm-hmm, they did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse.
Yep, she washed the engines. Her name was Minnie. Oh, we used to sing that song. You know the song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie, they can't hurt you there. But I tell you though, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university's got the high, big, whoop-de-doo jobs, but most of the people are working the minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, see, I worked in the service industry or bartender most of my life. And I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. See, here in Laramie, there's a class distinction, and there always has been. It's about the well-educated and the ones who are not. And the well-educated don't understand why the ones who are not don't get educated. Like I told you before, my kids had a fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best bartender in town.
And she was.
And that's not bragging. That's a fact.
Here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd all just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, honey, what I gotta say it? Shit out of luck, darling. Oh, getting an education, maybe you done got that on your tape.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. My daughter's on the sheriff's department. As for the gay issue, I don't care one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. I mean, if they did, I'd just say no thank you and walk away. And that's most of the population of the Laramie. You know, most of the population. I mean, they said if they were in a bar situation, they might smack them across the mouth, they might poke when they've been drinking, but most of them said that they'd just say no thank you and walk away. And see, Laramie is live and let live.
Not to say that Marge probably knows a lot more than she's letting on, and we need to respect her for that.
Where are you going with this story?
Well, we still haven't decided yet. When we finish, we're gonna try and bring her around to Laramie, though.
Well, then there are some parts I won't tell you.
Family member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a local shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come to my shop. That's how I knew him. But I don't know though. How does one person ever tell about another? You should really talk to my sister Romaine. She was a really good friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. We just called him Choo Choo because we used to call him Matt Choo, and then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he would just walk into a place and just be like, you know what I mean? And he would just smile at everyone. He made you feel great. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he was really into political affairs. And that's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. That's all I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was just really smart in political affairs, but not so smart in common sense type things, you know? So he moves to Laramie to go to school, and I don't know, I talked to him about 48 hours before his attack, and he had told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and they were planning Pride Week and whatnot, and he was just totally stoked about school. He was really happy about being there.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connell.
is that I was the first out gay and lesbian faculty member on campus, and that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things that you have to do. And so I was in my office and I noticed that this woman called. And so I called her back. I was expecting, it was a health insurance phone call, something like that. And so I called her back and I could hear her. She's clicking on a keyboard. And I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. I thought this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too, not a couple, just a person. And so she was the kind of lesbian who knew I wasn't coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians that she knew who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably take them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Just slow down.
But I kept telling myself people should live where they want to live, and there'd be times where I'd go down to Denver and I'd go to gay bars and I'd meet guys, and they'd ask me where I was from, and I'd say Laramie, Wyoming, and I met so many men down there from Wyoming, so many gay men who'd grown up here, and they're like, this is not a place where I can live, and how can you live there? I had to get out. But every once in a while, I'd come across a guy, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, I miss it there. And I'd love so much to go back and live there. And they'd get this starry-eyed look, and it's just like, if you want to live somewhere, then do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed out in a small town. But that's easier said than done, of course.
Divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend himself standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of the sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? Now the Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town. Baptist, Mormon, they're not just in Salt Lake, they're everywhere. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going on that irritates some folks.
Doug Law, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't think it just happened and some folks wrote in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of the panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. And to the right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, and God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was jolted because when we did the vigil, we called other ministers. We tried to get them involved, and they weren't going to get involved. They said, oh, we're going to stand back and see which way the wind is blowing. That angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders here. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
Gotta set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it God wants? So you study scripture, you look to your leaders. Now, once you know what the bounds are, then you sort of get a feel for what out of bounds is. There's a proclamation that came on a family. A family is defined as one woman and one man and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Most Christians use the Bible to say, it says here in the Bible, and most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible's the Word of God, and I ain't gonna fight that.
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived here on September 15th. I looked around, don't believe, cement factory, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
This morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things in her own way.
I lived in in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh, so 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a headscarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people say things to me like, why do you wear that thing on your head? And it's like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be like, and this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know, but why? And it's like, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there with my pop and chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Today, which was the last place Matthew's seen in public.
The fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, a few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Larry's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. In 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. That's why Wyoming's the equality state. So what I want to do is to establish my bar business here as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, gonna have a restaurant, gonna have a pool hall, gonna have a gift shop, do all that kind of crap, you know? Every night, ladies' night, huh? So the fireside here is the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
Oh, we had karaoke that night. I don't know, 20, 30 people. Matthew Shepard came in standing, actually right where you are. You know, if you really want to talk to somebody, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He's the kid who was bartending that night. You'll have to talk to him. His character speaks for itself. Galloway!
Oh, okay, I'll make this brief. Quick, get over with, it'll be everything, factual, just the facts. Okay, here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time. Tuesday nights, 10:30. Matthew Shepard shows up, alone, was a Heineken. Now, approximately 11:30, 11:45, 11:30, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson show up. I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. They walk in, you know, very stone-faced, you know, dirty, rude, grungy, gimme that sort of thing. And they come up to the bar. And, you know, as you know, they pay for a pitcher in dimes and quarters. And, you know, as some of you forget, $5.50 in dimes and quarters. That's a freaking nightmare. Now, Aaron and Russell, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They came up to the bar, ordered the pitcher, and took it with them into the pool room. Now, approximately like half an hour later, they're kind of walking around, you know, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I am not going to ask them if they want another one, because if they just paid for a pitcher in dimes and quarters, I got a real good feeling they ain't got no more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Honey meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it, and he would like hand over his whole wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes, now they might have meant something, but they can't say it was robbery. I don't believe it. Not even for an iota of a second.
Then a few moments later, I look over, and Aaron and Russell have been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and he wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And then he got aggravated with him and he walked off. He said that when he and Russell went into the bathroom, that was when they decided to pretend they were gay and get Matthew in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar. They say he's a gay. He's a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that. Bull crap. He never came on to me. Hello? You don't came on to him? No, I don't think so. 2, territorialism is the word that I'll use for this, and that's the fact that Matt was standing there. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, in the area that Matt had been seen all night. So, who approached you by that?
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that, knowing how gullible Matt could be, would have walked right into it. And being here, alone, no friends, just made him that much more vulnerable.
So, the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to, because you know, I'm basically the key eyewitness in this case. Basically, what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see the faces, but I saw the back of the heads. Next thing I know, Aaron and Russell are no longer around. You do the math.
Actually, wasn't the DJ the last person to see him on the way out? You remember, gave him a cigarette or something. His name was, Shadow.
Yeah, I was the last person that Matt talked to before he left the fireside. I was just messing around with my stuff, and he stopped me. Nah, I stopped him actually, and he was like, "Hey, Shadow," and I was like, "What, man? You ready to leave?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, this and that," and that's when I noticed the two guys. They stood outside, and you could see it. I mean, you could see it. And they stood outside, and they was looking at him, and he was looking back at them. And I stood there, and I talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And you seen them guys, you seen them getting like worried, like anxious to leave. And so when they left, I seen it. It was in a black truck, and it was a small truck. And 3 of them sat up in the front, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it. I mean, I didn't figure them guys was gonna be like that.
Really, it's a very powerful personal experience to have. It's so stark and so empty that you can't help but think of Matthew out there for nearly 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures with the view up there, isolated. And the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Karate.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship for this young man. On the way back, I made sure that no one saw me crying.
Company member Lee Funkowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy that found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it. I'm gonna try to find someone else to do it.
I was just looking around and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just lying there by a fence. I just thought it was a scarecrow, you know? I was like, Halloween's coming up. That was a Halloween gag. So I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked around the fence that was there. It was a bug-type fence. And got closer to him, and I noticed his hair. That was a major key to me. Noticing he was a human being, was his hair. Because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I even noticed his chest going up and down. But I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I thought it was just some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house and I just ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call. When I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. And I got out of my vehicle and I raced over, and I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so small. And he was laying on his back and he was barely breathing, but he was doing the best that he could. He had dry blood all over his head and under his body. And I was gonna breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. And his head was it was distorted. It didn't look normal. He looked like he had a very harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. I mean, we have those who have worked at big city hospitals, but we also have those who have not worked at big city hospitals. It's just not something you expect to see here. You expect to see those injuries coming from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect gross injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. Not from somebody doing that to another person. The ambulance report was it was a beating. So we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if I could have done anything, I would have done it. But there was nothing. I was even yelling at the top of my lungs, trying to get something out of him, like, "Hey, wake up! Hello!" But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
His thumbs were out in what we call the cuffing position. It's the way we handcuff people. And I got my boot knife and I tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. And I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think it's somebody from out of town who comes in and beats somebody. But you know, things like this happen, and they happen in Laramie. If there's been somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, certainly this is something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight that I finally got my knife through, and I rolled him to his left side, and when I did that, he stopped breathing on me. so I immediately put him back on his back, and that gave me enough adjustment to cut him free.
Now the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now I guess he'd gotten into a fight earlier that night back in town. So I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. And at this point, I didn't know that there was a connection at all. And so I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew. And so there's Aaron in one room in the ER, and Matthew in another, 2 doors down. As soon as we saw Matthew, I knew his care was way beyond our capabilities, and I had to call the neurosurgeon in Padre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew Shepard, and I never would have recognized him.
Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. There were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and there were 2 kids. I took care of both of their bodies. For a split second, I wondered, is this how God feels when he looks down at us? We are all his kids. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.